vegan and vegetarian. Now let's have a discussion, and Naijha, we'll start with you about what you guys think about is the difference between the two words, and what might be the some definitions that we've been taught but are not necessarily true about vegetarianism. But Naija, have a go at it, please. I know you feel
Well,
strong.
well, it's not a thought, as I know. Vegetarian was first, okay? Vegetarian has always existed. Vegan was birthed out of vegetarianism. Now, at one point, and I can tell you, because the definition used to be may consume dairy and egg. May consume. All of a sudden, the will got in there. As people hear vegetarian, you can't sell anything without cheese and dairy in it. It wasn't like that. Pure vegetarians existed because when Land of Kush opened up, it was a pure vegetarian restaurant. There was no cheese, there were no eggs, none of that. So this lifestyle existed. Now with veganism coming in, I think it's what the 1940s with Donald Watson, current when he termed the coin or termed the word, um, just no exploitation of any animals, none, whether it's wool, leather, silk, what have you. I feel strongly about it because when you look at, and I always, this is my sister right here, Tracy McQuirter. When you look at the African American Vegan Starter Guide and you go to the historical timeline, we have been in this lifestyle for forever, starting with the Seventh Day Adventists, the Adventists. This is not new to us. So I hate when people assume that people of color have no idea what this lifestyle is about or this is something new. It's not. We've been here. We had the Rastas, and it just upsets me that when you use the word vegan, you're feeling you're in this elite group, and you're not, because it's still birthed out of the whole vegetarian movement.
Right, and thank you so much for setting the record straight. Brenda, what do you think about this? This whole tussle between vegan being, there are certain connotations. Obviously, non-vegans get triggered, but even within our movement, this whole thing between vegan and vegetarian. Give us a little bit about, flavor around how you think about it.
I don't know. The way I think about it has changed over the years from, when I first became a vegan and was just like so gung ho and so like sort of militant about the whole thing. And so there was I had all this anger and animosity at that time towards people who identified as vegetarian because it was just like, that's not good enough. And just wanting to educate people today, it's about, a lot of people identify as vegetarian and they do in fact still consume dairy and eggs and like certain animal products, but they don't consume meat, and their reasoning is that I don't want an animal to have to die in order for me to eat. And so I try to, at this point, educate people gently about the fact that all of these industries are extremely exploitative towards animals. All of those animals are still going to die at the end of their usefulness. And, that there's a way to live and exist in the world where you're living in harmony with everything around you. And that just happens to be, called vegan right now. But like Naijha was saying, I mean, the Rastafarians have been practicing, their traditions where it's all about being at one with the earth. And so like, no, I'm not going to harm animals because they are a part of this divine experience on earth and, and whatever. So, so there is all this controversy and there is all this sort of back and forth, push and pull and fighting. And I think that the way to, remedy that is through education. Most of my work is about education and like gently educating people about these issues. And once people know, then they can make different choices.
Absolutely. Gentle persuasion is something that a lot of us, grow to embrace. I remember when I first turned vegan, I was like, completely you use the term gung ho. I was completely gung ho. I would speak with the South Asian community and basically call them smug vegetarians because a lot of them, are very arrogant about, hey, we're vegetarians, we don't eat meat, and therefore we're doing the right thing, little realizing how cruel the dairy industry is, until somebody actually knocked me on my head a little bit and said, well, do you know the word for vegetarian in Hindi? And the word is shakahari, right? And when you actually think about that word, it means 100% plant-based. That's exactly what it means. So going to what Naijha was saying, pure vegetarianism has existed long before. It's just, old wine in a new bottle, I guess, uh, vocabulary and advertising of it, as so it's cyclical. But Dr. Dehghan, share with us about your experience in the UK with these two terms, and with regards to even your own ancestry and your embracing your ancestral cuisine, your ancestral roots. How have you processed the word vegetarian?
It is interesting because, like you were saying, the word vegetarian and vegan, and the word vegan doesn't actually exist in Persia, in Farsi. And I was actually talking to other people from, Asian countries, from people, with people from Japan, Hong Kong, and Pakistan, and everybody was like, kind of, we don't have the word vegan. So, that they actually use the word vegan, just they say it in their own kind of pronunciation accent, which is a foreign word. So asking people actually to give up their cuisine, their traditional cuisine, and embrace a foreign word, that creates a lot of kind of friction. To be honest, it is very difficult for people to embrace it. We do have the word vegetarian, so everybody knows that. And it is just, it literally means plant eater. That is what it means. So, but it doesn't say if it is 100% or, what else is included. And it is interesting because, we talk about all these traditional diets being predominantly plant-based. And I always felt that wasn't the case in Iran. So I had actually to look and go and do some research, because I thought the Iranians always meat eaters, because at the moment meat plays a very central role in our cuisine. If somebody comes to your house and you want to show them your hospitality, you have to serve them meat. It's like kind of, otherwise it's just not right. So anyway, I came across actually a very famous poet, a very famous, Iranian poet. And he was like kind of saying that actually a king was tricked by the devil to introduce animal products into the Iranian cuisine.
Wow.
So he didn't realize that. So he gave, meat to everybody. People started enjoying that. And by the time he realized it was actually animal products, and, and they weren't eating animal products, it was too late. It was part of the diet. So I find it quite interesting that actually we do have this history, this story that consuming animal products is an act of devil, an evil act. It's actually when you are straying away from the righteous path that you start eating animal products. But it is a very, I don't know if you're familiar with Shahnameh, it's a very famous, yes. So it is actually one of the stories in Shahnameh. So it's actually a very old kind of, poem, and by a very famous poet. So it is part of the history, but people don't know it.
Right.
So, and it is sad because I think, again, there is a lot of, when people say go vegan, they don't know what it means. And then they try actually to introduce all these European vegan food, tacos, oatmeal. We don't have all these things. So, and so there's a lot of actually, again, it is something the elite do, the privileged, rich Iranians do. So I think it is sad because obviously as a nutritionist, I'm really interested in actually promoting health, and I know the health benefits of plant-based diet. So we need to find a new word, or just go back to what we were calling it, be a plant eater. That says it all. So yes, it is interesting to, to play with these words and find a new meaning.
Exactly. And there is just some, Naijha,
I just want to say something that I forgot to ask. Why are eggs and milk in the definition when they're not vegetables? That's what confuses me all the time. Like who made that decision to put them in there and they're not even vegetables?
Right. And that's a very pertinent question. You mentioned in the 1940s in the UK when, this word was coined. I was doing some research and I realized that before India was colonized, imperialists and colonialists, specifically from Great Britain, had not experienced an entire nation or entire culture of persons consuming predominantly plant-based diet, to the extent that they saw that they were. And so new terms had to be coined because they were struggling to, wrap their arms and wrap their heads around like how these people were eating. So they initially called it Hindu vegetarianism. And then as they started to almost kind of like inject dairy through military farms into South Asia, and the uptake of dairy started increasing in the Indian diet, the word vegetarian became closer to lacto-ovo or lacto-vegetarianism, you know,
Right.
and then almost became a generic. So when now in the modern days, when people say vegetarian, it automatically triggers people and they're like, oh, must consume dairy, cheese, eggs, maybe, that kind of thing. But it's always been a maybe, it's not a will. It just turned into a will, as you were saying, Naijha.
Right.
And so it's pretty interesting because you hear a lot of other terms too. You hear about the ahimsa diet. You
Right.
hear about these alternatives like
Yes.
sattvic nutrition, as opposed to tamasic nutrition in the yogic world, and so on. And that just talks to the colonial layers that our vocabulary, that our cuisine, etc., has also gone through.